We've got some breaking news to take a look at as the New York Rangers have officially given general manager Chris Drury a multi-year contract extension, which definitely means he's going to have the opportunity of hiring his third head coach as general manager of the New York Rangers. He previously hired York Rangers, which ended up seeing the team get all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning in Game 6, who obviously ended up losing in the finals there. Then we ended up seeing the next year they lose in Game 7 to the New Jersey Devils. We end up seeing York Rangers get fired. Then Peter Laviolette gets hired, where in that first season there, we saw Peter Laviolette take this team last season all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals once again, where this team ended up losing in Game 6, of course, to the eventual this time Stanley Cup champions in the Florida Panthers. And obviously, we went into this season with some decent expectations. I don't think people had the highest expectations after a fairly disappointing offseason. I think, personally, I wanted to see some major change happen. We did not see that happen there. We ended up seeing Riley Smith kind of be the biggest move from the team there. They also waived Barclay Goodrow, so got off him for nothing. But there wasn't that big move there, so expectations were still decent, though. Obviously, this team was kind of expected to make playoffs by most people. They obviously end up not making playoffs at this point here where we stand, and things definitely, among fans at least, some fans definitely want to see maybe Chris Drury kind of let go, and I can understand that. But at this point here, that's not going to happen, obviously. And I suspected that Chris Drury would remain with this team, would have at least, this upcoming season, and have the opportunity to definitely hire the next head coach and kind of see what happens from there. With that contract extension, it's really not that surprising considering he is going to have that opportunity, which I figured, to hire that next head coach. So really and truly, you're probably going to give that head coach and the general manager at least another year together, right? You're probably going to give them 2 years together, I'd imagine. So it does make sense to give Drury at least that extension there so that they at least have those 2 years together. So that is understandable kind of why this extension was handed out. And I would assume Chris Drury is going to look to obviously hire a guy who can be here for the next, ideally, 4 or 5 years. But you obviously have to get the right guy in the building there. And I am kind of hopeful that, we will see this team go in a different direction from guys like York Rangers and Peter Laviolette and go in a different direction towards maybe a younger guy who has a different kind of mindset there, like a Jay Leach, obviously a Todd Nelson, a Jeff Halper, maybe one of those guys who haven't had that opportunity yet to be an NHL head coach, but maybe they've been an assistant for quite a few seasons now in the NHL, like a Jeff Halpern has been, I believe, like 7 seasons now as assistant coach under John Cooper there with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that could be a pretty interesting guy there. Todd Nelson has been assistant for a while now. You also got a guy like Jay Leach who also has been an assistant there with the Kraken and the Bruins now. So there are some guys out there who maybe haven't been NHL head coaches yet who could be, pretty good hires. And you take a look at a guy like Spencer Carberry. He was a guy who I thought could have been a pretty decent candidate for the Rangers. They never ended up going too far with him, and it ended up seeming. And he obviously ends up getting hired by the Washington Capitals, and look what he's done with them so far. I would say they've definitely kind of overachieved most people's expectations, and he has definitely been a part of that. So even last season as well, they overachieved, and obviously they made the playoffs there against the Rangers, lost in the first round, but they still kind of overachieved, and obviously they did it again this season there. He was a coach who I kind of talked about, and he obviously goes to them and looked great. So maybe if the Rangers could go in a direction like that kind of and go with a guy like a Jay Leach or a Todd Nelson or a Jeff Halpern, who, like I said, 7 years under John Cooper with the Lightning there, I think that's kind of interesting. So maybe hiring him might not be the worst idea. He also is a former Ranger, although only played 30 games back in 2012, 2013. Could be an interesting guy to pick up there. So I think there are some good options available. And if the Rangers do go with a younger guy, I definitely would rather see that happen there. And considering Chris Drury did hire 2 very experienced head coaches previously, and Peter Laviolette and York Rangers, 2 guys who had a lot of seasons, previously being head coaches in the NHL, going in a direction of a guy like a Jay Leach or a Todd Nelson or a Jeff Halpern, I really do think kind of makes a lot of sense there. David Carl's an interesting guy, but I'm not quite sure he'll be kind of making that jump, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. It definitely is possible. Either way, though, there are some younger kind of coaches out there, or at least guys who don't have that kind of previous NHL head coaching experience that could definitely be good candidates. And when you're kind of taking a look at what Chris Drury has done in the past, I think overall he hasn't made a bunch of great moves, but I think as of late he has started to make some better ones, and at least we have seen this team and Chris Drury try and, go in a different direction here by obviously trading away guys like Jacob Trouba there, waiving Barclay Goodrow. He's tried to kind of get rid of some of these contracts there, and we saw a pretty good one there with JT Miller. I think obviously acquiring him was a pretty good overall deal, I think, for the Rangers. So there have been some good and some bad ones there. A lot more deals happening on the deadline, but I think in this upcoming offseason there, if you can get that new head coach in who's going to be a good one, and obviously it's tough to find a good head coach who's going to be here for the next 3-4 years. I mean, that's tough to find, but if you can find a good head coach here, I definitely think it's possible to see this team kind of get back on track here. I mean, this team has some good players, obviously. Adam Fox is a great defenseman. Igor Shesterkin, especially when it gets to playoff time, is a phenomenally elite goaltender. In the regular season, I think it's a bit underrated. When you take a look at the real analytics there, the goals saved above expected, he's still one of the better ones in the league. So I think overall, you've got a good goalie, you've got that great defenseman, you've got some good talented forwards, obviously, JT Miller, Trocheck, Panarin. You hope Lafreniere can turn things around. You've got Will Cooley. You've got some young guys there in Perreault, Berard, Hoffman. So there is a lot of talent on this team. And I think in general, if some of these guys can take some steps forward and get back on track there, if Mika Zibanejad can kind of continue to take those steps on wing there, I think he played a lot better once he went to wing. If he can have a full season there, maybe he can start playing a lot better on wing. Not saying he's going to be worth that full $8.5 million, but if he can at least, continue to play better than what he was playing at center, that's a bonus for this team for an entire season there. And I am hopeful this team will, trade away guys like Keandre Miller and Chris Kreider, which will save this team a lot more cap space as well, which could allow them to go out there and add in a real impactful, top four, maybe even top pairing caliber guy. I mean, I think this team definitely needs to go out there and add in a real impact defenseman. And if they can get a true top four caliber guy or a top pairing caliber guy, I think that would be phenomenal for this team. So adding in a really good defenseman, adding in a third line center is key. If you can add another good forward here or there, if you have to trade away one of the young guys, maybe it's worth it. We'll have to wait and see who becomes available via trade. And if that star does become available on the forward side of things, maybe this team does jump at it. And overall, I think it's going to be a pretty wild offseason potentially. I mean, there are a lot of moves that need to be made with this team. First off, you've got to go out there and, find that next head coach. Then we're going to have to wait and see what happens in the draft lottery to make that decision on that first round pick, whether or not this team's going to decide to keep it. We'll have to wait and see because it's guaranteed to be in that top 13 with the way the draft lottery works now. But does this team decide to give it away this year and kind of decide to keep that pick next year, right? That's the decision they have to make. Then there's the draft. And of course, after that, it will be the NHL free agency where hopefully this team will end up signing some pretty key players, do some big names like Mitch Marner and Aaron Ekblad and Sam Bennett. Do those guys end up actually hitting free agency, and do they end up possibly signing with the Rangers, one of those guys? We'll have to wait and see. There are some big names that could potentially be available, but it ends up kind of depending on whether or not these guys end up, not signing an extension with their team and end up just hitting free agency. So they could look to make some key adds via free agency, or they could also look to go out and make some big trades happen, which I definitely hope this team will be pretty active in making, lots of trades with guys like Keandre Miller and Chris Kreider. I am very hopeful that they'll deal both those guys away. I think you'll save a lot of cap space there. You'll obviously save that entire contract of Chris Kreider, which is, $6.5 million. And you'd also save whatever you end up having to pay Keandre Miller, which will be more than what he made this season, which was $3.872 million. So let's say Keandre ended up making on the kind of low end there, let's say just about $4 million. That's $10.5 million you just saved there from trading away Keandre and Chris Kreider. Now, do you end up taking some players back that are NHL guys? So you obviously have to take some salary back. That's possible. We'd have to obviously see what happens there with those deals and whether or not they were for just picks or prospects or actual NHL guys. But that's the point there. You can definitely open up a lot more cap space than this team already does have. And this team doesn't have a crazy amount of room if they don't trade away guys like Keandre and Kreider. But if they do, that opens up a potential, major move for a potential true kind of star and some other stuff as well. If you don't trade away guys like Keandre and Kreider, then you're really kind of stopping your ability to go out there and make some major changes. But I think if you do trade away guys like Keandre and Kreider, it opens up the door to see some major kind of players added in here, and you could truly see a potential star or superstar kind of added into this team in this offseason if those moves do happen, which I'm kind of hopeful, but it kind of depends, who becomes available via free agency, who doesn't sign those contract extensions, and who also becomes available via a trade. We'll have to wait and see, but I am hopeful that this offseason will be a big one, and Chris Drury will be with this team for at least, the next couple seasons, it seems like. So hopefully he can make some right moves here and get this team back on track towards potentially winning a Stanley Cup. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on the New York Rangers giving a multi-year extension to general manager Chris Drury, as he will have his opportunity to hire his third head coach with this team. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.